Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, whichever the case may be. For everyone out there listening across the world, welcome to a brand new Vestiges After Dark. Open lines, open topics. I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this May 11th, 2021. And we're taking your calls tonight, so start calling in. 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. We're also taking questions from social media and in the chat room. So hopefully you're joining us on the chat room on YouTube. Log into our channel on YouTube and ask your questions. You can start putting them in the queue right now, and Sister Mary Joan will be monitoring the chat throughout the entire show. And we'll be talking about whatever is on your mind. Don't go away. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Tuesday so far. It's been a busy one for me, and I guess it's pretty much the end of the day for a lot of you. But you know, it's been like I said, busy, and I've been just basically Tuesday's my in-office work day. It's when I try to get everything done, both for the church, but also for all of the extended things that I do. I did the quarterly reports for our business. Just basic stuff like that just kind of takes up a lot of time. But I'm done, and I can now sit with you this evening for 2 hours and talk about the things that are on your mind. And tonight is open topics and open lines. So basically, you, the audience, decides what do you want me to talk about. You tell me, okay, and we'll discuss it. If I have anything to contribute, I'll contribute. If I don't, I'll let you know that, well, that's just not my area of expertise, and we'll move on to the next question. But that's open topics, open lines, and we'd prefer you call in. Of course, you can go to our YouTube chat on the YouTube channel for this particular broadcast, and you can start asking your questions there. Sister Mary Joan will be monitoring the chat throughout the entire show and be bringing your questions to me. I know that there were a lot last week, and I'd like to maybe even get to some of those because we never got to them. We had a lot of callers last week, which was really awesome, and I hope this show will be just as busy with the calls, with the phone lines. So call in. That number to call us is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. I have it up on the screen. It's in all of the announcements for this show today. So hopefully we'll get a lot of callers, and you can call now. All right. We might not take your call right away, but get into the queue. First come, first serve basis. And there's really no topic that is off topic. We'll take anything that's on your mind. Of course, this is a paranormal show. We deal with ghosts, exorcism, mysticism, religion, spirituality, metaphysics, esotericism, you name it. We talk about it. But this, we can talk about other things too, if it's something's on your mind, or if you want to have sort of a paranormal or religious or spiritual take on something that's happening in the world today that is mundane. We can take your question on that as well. This is really an opportunity for you, all of you out there, to ask us whatever is on your mind and get a very reasoned, well thought out response. I'm not going to mislead you. There's always something that I can usually give as far as guidance goes, and we hopefully have done that in previous episodes, and we'll do it again tonight. So start asking your questions now. Start calling in, and we'll get to you, as soon as possible. Now, we've been working this past week again on our little experiment that we started 2 weeks ago regarding demanding to the universe, demanding to the cosmos as creatures of creation, as made in the image of God, as part of our authority under that designation, that we demand that the pandemic ends, as well as all of its effects, both the medical effects as well as the social effects, which have been disastrous economically, psychologically, emotionally, you name it. It has hurt people. And the lockdowns, the mask mandates, the social distancing, none of that is healthy. And so we want to see the end of this thing. And so we've started this little demand at 3 p.m., actually a big demand at 3 p.m. Collectively, all of you hopefully are setting your alarms each day at 3 p.m. so that you don't forget. And 3 p.m. Eastern time, that is. And at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's when we get started. And every day we've been doing this for the last 2 weeks, making demands to the cosmos as the demiurge. We talked about the reality of what the Gnostic demiurge really was, making that demand that this ends. And I'm seeing progress. We're already seeing progress. Last week we saw already a call by many governors to return to normal and the ending of all of their mandates, which is a wonderful thing. And then this week, the news, I guess, the most significant of all of it is that it sounded like Fauci. It sounded like Fauci was indicating or alluding to the fact that within the next, at least within a very short period of time, he didn't really give a specific time frame, but within the next few weeks, perhaps, we might see from the CDC a relaxing of the mask mandates, period, as far as or at least the guidance, the masking guidance, which is what's going to be necessary, I think, for a lot of locations and a lot of businesses to end this masking requirement. So that's Fauci now, all right? Everyone always listens to what he has to say, apparently. So hopefully this is a good indicator that our work here is actually making an impact. So I think what we need to do now is let's just continue this, since we now have the good habit of doing this each day at 3 p.m. Eastern time, making this demand that the pandemic ends, that we return to normal. And let's continue to do that now until we see the end of the masking requirement, because I think that will be the last thing to go. And when that goes, I think we'll hopefully start to see really normal life return. So let's go ahead and do that. At least let's do it for as long as we can muster the energy to do it. And I think that, maybe a couple more weeks of this and we might actually have reached our goal. And it shows how powerful this methodology is. When you affirm your position as a creature of creation, as my students hear me talk about so often when we discuss esoteric mysticism. And speaking of which, esoteric mysticism is the subject that I teach. I've been teaching it for several years now. It's an online course that I teach with my students. And next week on Vestiges After Dark, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to invite as many students as will call in, all my students, to be guests on the show, and we're going to talk about how this has been a life-changing experience for them, how it has been learning this stuff that I've taught, and we've been doing this for now several years. Danielle's in the chat room there. Danielle, you might be able to remember how many years it's been. Has it been 3, I think? I'm not sure. But we've been doing it for a while, and there's a lot of content, hundreds of hours, and a lot of people have found this to be truly life-changing. And if it's not, then they leave. They leave very quickly. They might sign up for a week or two, and then they disappear. Initially, there was a lot of students, and I'd say more than half of them fell away. And they always give you the promise that they're going to be back, but they never were. They never did come back. And I really think it has a lot more to do with ego again, not wanting to affirm it or accept the fact that this content can be very, very difficult to process at that level of the ego that most of us live within. Danielle is telling us 4. It's been 4 years. So my goodness gracious, that's been a long time. And there's a lot of content when you're doing a weekly 1 to 2 hour class. Sometimes we've even gone more than 2 hours. There's a lot of content in 4 years that you can produce every week doing 1 or 2 hours a week. So it has been 4 hours in June, Joy tells me. So this is really fantastic that we have been able to have such a successful esoteric program such as Esoteric Mysticism. It's a webinar. I teach it every Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And for students that can't make it at that time, we have the archive so that there's an on-demand archive that they can watch everything that they might have missed. If the new students want to come in, we have everything in the library that they can go and watch. So it's a great thing. And next week, we're going to talk to our students. We're going to talk to them and get what their experiences have been from beginning to end. It might inspire some of you to even join us as students. But we're not really doing it as an advertisement. I'm doing it more about, discussing how powerful as creatures of creation we really are. And so along the lines of what we've already, talked about in terms of making this demand. Not a suggestion, not a request. It's not a prayer. It's a demand. Affirming ourselves as creatures of creation for the universe to comply with our collective intent. And we're seeing it now. And it's very powerful when everyone is in agreement. Because that was really the whole basis between, the idea of, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. There's something about, when we are collectively connected that has power there. And there's an example of just how powerful it can be. So we will continue to do that. And, I'm speaking of like metaphysical oddities. My wife, Tracy, and you know her as Sister Maximilian. She's in the order, helps me with the work that we do and the outreach for the church. She has these little hobbies that she does, little I call them hobby/interests because they're not really hobbies in the traditional sense. It's not things that she likes to do, but it's things that she likes to read about. And World War II is one of her kind of her history periods that she enjoys studying. But in the modern era, one of the things that she really gets into is the climbing season at Mount Everest. And it's kind of a fascination of hers, and she follows it very closely. And I was, doing my normal research and things that I do from week to week about various topics and things of interest and things that I focus on that always, usually have to deal with some level of my work in metaphysics or paranormal studies. And I came across this. I mean, you might know about it. I didn't know about this. And I don't know if even Tracy knows about this, but you'll find this fascinating. But there is a guy. He's known as the Iceman. Some of you probably know about him. He's this Dutch athlete. I believe you pronounce his name Wim Hof, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Maybe some of our Dutch listeners might be able to tell us something about, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Wim Hof, I think, is how you say it. But he's referred to as the Iceman. And this guy is an incredible individual. He's 62 years old, and he is known for having climbed in 2007 Mount Everest. He went up to 23,600 feet wearing nothing but shorts and sandals. Okay? He actually had to abort the climb because of a foot injury that he sustained, but had nothing to do with the cold. He is able to use meditation and breathing techniques and cultivating natural innate abilities that are already part of our nature to be able to become impervious to things like hypothermia. We think we need clothing. People will talk about clothing and it's like, it's not just about modesty for some people. It's also about, they say, well, we need clothes because we need to keep warm. But there are people that truly believe that the only reason why we think we would need clothes is because we have lost our innate ability to know how to keep warm on our own merits. That our bodies actually have the potential for this already. And he's kind of an example of that. What happens when you tap into that latent ability. And it's an amazing thing. I mean, this guy has done crazy stuff. He holds the Guinness World Record for the farthest swim under ice. Okay, and of course he doesn't do that with a wetsuit. He was actually swimming under to do this, and he ended up swimming blind because his cornea started to freeze. And yet he continued to keep going, and he did not become hypothermic. I mean, the guy is incredible. And but what really got me is the climbing of Mount Everest, because I mean, this taxes even the healthiest of athletes. We're always talking about, Tracy's always mentioning about how there's always somebody that's going to die. And the cold or the low oxygen, all that stuff gets to you. Injuries, all sorts of things. And there's bodies as you keep going up. They're landmarks. They're like markers along the way that these bodies, they just can't bring them back down. And I mean, you're talking about, layers of clothing and everything that people do. And this guy did it in shorts and sandals. Okay? Only an injury to his foot stopped him from being able to complete it. It was nothing to do with the cold or the low oxygen. It is a remarkable thing, and it proves time and time again that the human body is more capable than we even can imagine. And it all falls into the same category that we've already established when we were talking earlier a few weeks ago about the demiurge. Where did this Gnostic concept come from? This idea of this fake God that was enslaving us because he believed he was the real God, and he wanted us to believe that he was the real God. And so in order to feel like the real God, he enslaves us so that we continue to worship him instead of the real true God. And then we become completely dependent and lose all of our authority as creatures of creation under the actual God. It's obviously theologically not consistent with how current conventional Christian theology operates, but there is some philosophical value to it. And there's actually a metaphysical component there that is exceptionally valuable to understand. And this proves, once again, that there is something within us, call it the Maya, call it ignorance, whatever, that holds us back from reaching our highest potential. As soon as we make some effort, something pulls us back down again. Every single time. And it's usually ego reality that does that. So as we, explore our latent abilities, and that's part of what I teach in esoteric mysticism, is not just about exploring latent ability, but unlearning all of the things that hold us back. Basically, to use Gnostic metaphor, detaching ourselves from the chains that the demiurge has locked us up in. That's exactly what my students are learning to do. And, it's not a short process. 4 years later, they're still working on it. We don't even use the word. Like one of the achievements here is to become a true, genuine mystic. But we don't ever give that designation. It's always mystical aspirant, because no matter how far you go in this work, there's always another level that you can achieve to. And every time you reach to the one that you think is the last one, there's an entire new reality that's unlocked to you. You never actually reach the end, but you keep progressing. You keep getting better each time. And so, all of these are examples of the various things that we as human beings have access to. We forget that we have the authority to put an end to a lot of the bullshit we see in the world today. The only reason the bullshit is continuing on is because we keep proliferating it. We make that happen. And it takes a collective to stop that from happening. So collectively right now, everyone is operating on fear and ignorance. That's the normal, natural condition now in a fallen world. That's the world of the demiurge, to get back to the Gnostic metaphors that we talked about 2 weeks ago. So collectively, let's be an enlightened species. Okay, so I can't obviously reach the entire world. You guys can help to make that happen by, supporting this show, supporting the ministry that pays for this show, both financially, but also in terms of, letting people know about it, getting word out, retweeting, subscribing, telling others to do the same, and building that audience. Not just because I want a, larger audience. It's not what it's about. What it is about is getting more and more people on board with understanding their latent potential that they don't understand as being made in the image of God and what that really means. And it has nothing to do with God looking like us. It has everything to do with you being a creature of creation with all of the authority that God himself has over creation, because he made us stewards of it. And that was never revoked, actually. Despite all of our failings, he never revoked our authority over this world. And we can command it. And when we don't like something, we can end it. The only reason why we have things like racism, and we have things like abuse, and we have things like violence, the only reason why we have those things in the world today is because we want them. Collectively, out of our ignorance, collectively, out of our inability to look beyond our selfish nature, we proliferate it. Like this pipeline issue that's happening on the East Coast. We got the pipeline, right? Pipeline was hacked. I guess they're saying now it's some Russian hack job. Okay, and so they shut it down, which slowed, I guess, some of the normal refinement process and the things that they have to do to keep the gas supply up on the East Coast. But they even came forward and said there is not a shortage. It's not a true shortage. We'll get this. We should get this resolved by the end of the week. And there's not a shortage. Don't panic buy. But what does everyone go do? They go and panic buy. So Sister Maximilian was on our way home today, and was legitimately in need of gas, and was fortunately able to find a station to fill up at. But while she was there, she sees these people with giant boats wanting to get their boats filled too. And it had nothing to do, I can guarantee you, it had nothing at all to do with, wanting their boat so that they can go and take a weekend out on the lake. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with using the boat as an excuse so that they could squander more of the fuel. And then they could siphon it out of the boat into their cars if the situation got bad enough. That is so damn selfish, I can't even tell you. It really pisses me off. Don't be like that. That's ignorance that causes that. That's fear that causes that. The same conditions that cause this whole panic reaction that we see with the pandemic. That is the product of fear and ignorance. Fear and ignorance is our baseline now. Okay, so you need to be better than that. And I teach my students how to do this. And you don't even need to be a student to do this. Just listen to the things that I talk about. I never control anybody, but I definitely help to facilitate an unlearning process that gets you out of your ego control, the ego away from your control, and then puts the more authentic reality of yourself in control. And that's where we can get beyond some of this stuff. And that's what it's all about. So let's continue the 3 o'clock thing, okay? 3 o'clock Eastern time, but let's all do it at the same time. It's more powerful when we do it together, collectively. I mean, if you miss it, you can still do it that day. It's still better to do it sometime that day than to not do it at all. But 3 p.m. Eastern time, wherever you are in the world, figure out when that is. I know it can be late for some of you, but make a little sacrifice. Guess what? The universe really, really pays attention to sacrifice. If you're inconvenienced by something spiritually, the universe pays attention to that more. It really does. And these are all things that you can do to make this place better. So when we get successful with the end of the pandemic, maybe we can work on some other deficits in the world, like violence and racism and all this other bullshit that we can put an end to if we just collectively decide to be better. Again, the number to call tonight is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. And with us tonight, as always, we have Sister Mary Joan. Hello, sister. How are you tonight?
Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody does have a full tank, and I hope their gas tanks are locked.
Yeah, definitely. If you have a lock, make sure that it is applied, because it is a absolute reality that people will try to siphon your gas out of your vehicle. And
yeah. Quick story about the being able to heal yourselves and meditate. So back when I had the wreck and I was in ICU, and I mean, I was really tore up. About day 6 in the ICU, they had a problem getting my blood pressure regulated and my O2 levels kept dropping. And they were talking about next steps and everything. A lot of it was because of the pain I was in. So I actually tapped into, I guess, in martial arts, we call it your chi. And I had a lot of martial arts training as a teenager, and I just started doing my meditative breathing. Back when I was a martial arts student, we called it Jedi breathing. And within an hour, I was able to calm myself enough to where my blood pressure came back down, my O2 levels went back up, and I used it throughout the whole process. I was in the hospital. They originally thought I was going to be in the hospital possibly 3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was out in 2.5.
Wow.
And a lot of it is because every day I would go into this deep meditation. I would actually see myself bringing in light from the universe, from God, and going through my body and trying to heal the injuries. And, they originally said I may never walk again because of my pelvis being almost an internal amputation.
Right.
And I told them I'd be back to work in 6 months. And they just kind of laughed and they said, "No, honey, I don't think you realize how hurt you are." And one thing I remember my dad saying was, "I don't think you know my daughter." And so I don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, I was back to work. I was on a walker, but by God, I was back to work. So you do have that ability to tune in to that deeper part of yourself and just kind of connect to source, and you can heal yourself.
Oh yeah.
I credit God actually saved my life, but he gives you that little goal that, okay, I did this for you, now you do this for me, and make yourself better. And I was able to heal myself a lot more than they thought I would. So we all have that ability. It's just a matter of tuning into it and being persistent, and it will work.
It does. And I think hopefully it doesn't take trauma or something like that to shake up the connection to the ego in order to realize it. We should be able to...
Well, we're stubborn creatures, Bishop.
And we are. And I mean, that's why religion exists, because religion is discipline. And when you hear people that say, "Oh, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious," what you're really saying when you say that is, "I'm lazy and I don't want to have any boundaries that I have to work within because that takes effort." That's what it means when you say that. Okay? We could talk and we could get into all of the various reasons that people have for that statement, but every single time when you break it down, it has to do with ego. Your ego does not want to be told what to do. Your ego does not want to be disciplined. Yeah. And so it's a lot easier to make up your own direction than it would be to follow an ancient principled one that takes a lot of work and becomes a lifestyle that maybe you don't want to have to adhere to, because it's, again, effort. So let's hope that we don't require trauma like what you went through in order to unlock this hidden potential. But fortunately, you were able to see that potential and utilize it. And I mean, look at you, you walk today.
I think it took that trauma to get me to realize I needed to do something.
Yeah.
I could have just laid there and had a pity party, but I decided I wasn't. And it was painful, and there were good days and bad days, but I ended up being discharged a month early and did go back to work.
Yeah.
And I amazed the doctors, the nurses, and I've told you before, to this day I'm still friends with several of my therapists. It was a life-changing experience all the way around, and I made basically new family on the way, and we're still close 9 years later.
That's awesome.
So you all have the ability, so just don't give up. You just got to learn to dig deep, and you'll find it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what meditation's really all about. It really frustrates me as an exorcist, and you know this because we've had these conversations, that so many prominent Roman Catholic exorcists who write these books, because they're sort of considered to be the authority on Roman Catholic exorcism, and so they get these book deals. But they're filled with things like Harry Potter, leads to possession, and meditation and yoga are evil and dangerous. And it's like I just want to claw my eyes out when I hear stuff like this, because that again is just, you're substituting one form of ignorance for a completely different form of ignorance. And the most dangerous ignorance is when you don't think you're ignorant. That's the most dangerous one.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what I hear when I see Roman Catholic exorcists talk like this, because what meditation does is it breaks down the connection to the ego reality and allows you to see the authenticity of nature, and thus unlock some of the latencies in our entire being that are not being utilized properly, which are the ultimate cause to so many of the problems that we see in the world. So if an exorcist has any interest whatsoever in the perfection of humankind and the removal of sin, then you would not be discouraging people to use practices that actually help to make them better people. I mean, come on. It's a no-brainer, but it really frustrates me when I see this. And so, those are some of the things that, I mean, honestly, it becomes such a discouraging thing to watch, that the hardest part of my job as clergy is having to constantly correct all of the errors that I see on a regular, ongoing basis coming from outside the church and within the church, and then having to deal with all the ignorance of even where I stand, or what my authority is, or what my position is, what my credentials are. And having to then explain that too, because people are so ignorant to the basics of Christianity. Christianity, I'm completely convinced of this, sister. I am completely convinced that part of the problem that we see today, people always ask me, why are people leaving the church in droves? And it's easy to blame the scandals, the pedophiles, the fact that the church was protecting them. It's easy to
Those
blame.
Are excuses.
Yeah, it's easy to blame. Find scapegoats to make it easy. But the ultimate reality is, why are people leaving the church? You want to really know why? The real answer, and a lot of people aren't going to want to accept this, but it's the truth. Because take it from someone who's living it every single day. I see it. I know the origin of it. I know it every single time, because I always get to the bottom of everything that I'm exposed to. And I can tell you what it is. And a lot of you are not going to like to hear this. But the reason why people are leaving the church in droves has nothing to do with all these scapegoats that have been created around it. It has everything to do with the fact that Christian theology is very intellectual. It's very complicated. It's very sophisticated. And most people are not up to the challenge. They want it to be easy. They want something that they don't have to think too much about. And that's what creates the apathy. It's laziness, intellectual laziness, as well as mental laziness. But the fact of the matter is, it all comes back down to laziness. And it's not even that people are too stupid for it, although I would think that, maybe at this point, we've allowed ourselves to become so stupid that, yes, something like Christianity is going to be beyond us. Because we're just become, we're atrophied. We're intellectually atrophied.
Yeah. Yeah. People need to do their own research. Go find those old books that have old teachings in it. Learn on your own. You have to go find the stuff yourself. You can't just say, okay, I want to learn this. Give me everything. No, you have to find it yourself. That's what the journey is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And that people don't want that challenge. They don't want to rise to that challenge. And so the church challenges them. So it's easier to say, oh, I don't want to be a part of that. They're all a bunch of hypocrites. It's too political.
Yeah.
They're pedophiles. It's easy to play that game. But what would be really challenging? How about you stand up to all those assholes that you don't like in the church and become a prominent force in the church and kick them out?
Mm-hmm.
Or do what I did.
Agreed.
Find a back door in.
Agreed.
And be working from the inside on the outside. There's all sorts of ways to do it, but it takes a lot of work, and you don't get paid for it.
Nope.
Oh, my goodness. Sister, I know that there were a lot of questions last week, and, I want to kind of answer some of them. I don't know if you remember them or if you wrote them down and still have them, but I don't know if
I looked, Bishop. I wrote down a few of them, but I have them crossed out, so I think we got to them.
Oh,
so
we did?
Whatever
Okay.
we did have left, well,
okay.
I don't know if I may have missed a few.
Well,
so if anybody remembers or you all have a question, go ahead and bring it up now.
Yeah, I mean, those of you listening on YouTube, if you had a question last week that we did not get to, or if you've had a question from previous weeks that we've never gotten to, now's the time to ask those questions. You can do it in the chat, or better yet, call us. Call the guest line, 516-453-0138, and ask us directly, because it's always better to have a little conversation. And it makes for a more interesting production, I think, when you have, the interaction. But you don't have to call if you don't absolutely want to. If it will be a more direct way of answering your question, and you have a more guaranteed answer that you're going to get if you call us. But go ahead and chat. In the chat room, put your questions there, and we will absolutely answer them if we see them. You can also, if you're listening anywhere else, whether it be through, Blog Talk Radio or somewhere else on social media, you can also go on Twitter and hashtag Vestiges After Dark and ask your question that way as well. So there's lots of ways that you can reach out to us tonight, and get a question that you might have on your mind answered. And we can see what we can do. Also on Facebook, go to the announcement for when we went live. About 46 minutes ago, I think I put it out there. You can leave comments over there, and I'll be monitoring all of these locations to see if anything comes in. But calling is the best one. So 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. And the more questions I get, the less you'll hear me complain about the stupidity of mankind. And I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, don't be shy, folks. Call in. You're amongst friends here. Anything's on the table.
Yeah. Anything, any topic. You've got it. You want to hear our opinions on it. You want to get our position on it. You want to get our guidance on it. This is what this show's been produced for. And, we don't always do a lot of open topics, open lines shows. Right now we are, because I'm trying to really promote this feature. And bring value to the fact that it does cost the church a lot of money every month to offer this feature, because it does require a switchboard, and there's not a lot of switchboard options out there for podcasting. And so we're using the one that we have, and I've got it all set up and rigged so that we can still broadcast through YouTube. But it costs money to do this, so make sure that in order to assure that we're getting the value out of it to be able to continue this feature, you need to use it. Otherwise, we will go back to Spreaker, which costs us a lot less, but you're going to lose the ability to have callers. Okay, So keep an eye on the chat, sister, for me. But do you happen, while we're waiting and just discussing, do you happen to remember any questions from previous episodes that we might have seen in the chat that we never answered? Anything that might come to mind?
I'll be honest, I wrote them down, but it's been several weeks.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of working from my home office / living room, and I don't know where they are at.
Let me see if I go to, I'm going to go to the hashtag on Twitter to see if there's anything that I might have missed. The problem is not everyone always uses the hashtag too, and that sometimes makes it hard to find any questions. The people like asking if it's okay to ask vaguely theological questions, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead.
I said everything's on the table.
Yeah, there is no, there's really no limit. But I'm not seeing anything on social media at the present time. I really didn't really go out there and promote tonight's show as much as I've done in the past. Let's look at what's being said right now here.
Someone's asking about the Dateline film, and I don't think we don't have a date on that yet, guys.
Yeah, in fact, I have not heard from
Dateline
Australia in weeks, so I don't know what the status is of that. I know that we did take them on a case that we worked, and they filmed the entire case from beginning to end. Of course, they're not going to probably feature a whole lot of that. It's really, from what I understand, it was a production that was designed to demonstrate exorcism ministry in the modern world and kind of what people are doing, and they, were featuring us as one example. But yeah, they have not reached out to us yet, and there's no date that I have seen that is set on this. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine at this point. We were actually talking about that.
We do have one in the chat room from, I hope I pronounce this right, Cathal. Who I briefly had a conversation with. So I was speaking with Sister Mary Joan and was explaining that my friend recently bought a secondhand Ouija board. He doesn't keep it in his room, but he has been starting to get nightmares and headaches. I think I briefly said the best thing to do would be to mail it to us and have us neutralize it.
Yeah.
Buying Ouija boards, especially secondhand Ouija boards from thrift stores or whatnot, you do not know who's been using that board, what kind of energy's been put into it. If the portals are wide open, you just don't know. So I would definitely discourage anyone from buying a secondhand Ouija board from an antique store or a secondhand shop, because you just don't know what that board contains.
Yeah, you don't know what it was used for or what the
Correct.
previous owner might have even encountered, or what he might have brought in. Because, essentially, he might not even know. The previous owner might not even realize that he was successful in making a connection to something, or maybe something that he connected with was largely...
And you don't know if they bought it secondhand, so you really have no idea.
Yeah, particularly if it's an older one, one of the older models that were made on wood, or you don't know. So there's always that risk. Most of the time, Ouija board communication is literally speaking with your subconscious mind. Most of the time, that's what you're actually conjuring with a Ouija board. But the problem is that your subconscious mind is so malleable. It is so easily manipulated by non-corporeal forces that if there is anything in proximity to the location where the Ouija board is being used, there's always the potential for that foreign awareness to become attached to or attracted to the operations that are taking place on that Ouija board. But most of the time, when you're using the Ouija board, you're drawing it out and out of your own mind. And it's interesting because I've done a lot of experiments with the Ouija board. And I've had some external ones that we've talked about on this show before. Remarkable ones, If you guys haven't heard the story, let me know. I'll mention it again. I know that any longtime listener knows it, though. But the Ouija board is something that is essentially a tool for tapping into the non-corporeal part of the universe. And the non-corporeal part of the universe has its own rules that it operates by, which are very different from the ones that we as corporeal or largely corporeal beings follow. And so there is always the potential that, well, the layman using the Ouija board is not going to really necessarily know whether or not it's something that's spawning from their own mind or from another mind. And a lot of times, because we're not trained in knowing the difference, we can't tell the difference. Most people cannot tell the difference between what is something that's coming out of their own mind or from an external source. That's the real risk, and that's the real danger. But once you understand,
this is concerning.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Cathal says he's become very protective of the board. Me and my friends were going to burn it. So that is a problem. That could already be an attachment issue. Mm-hmm. And burning it may not do anything. I actually have a friend of mine who told me a Ouija board story several years ago. It started to become a problem, and he got rid of it, actually threw it away in the trash. And a few days later, it ended up back in the house. Yeah. And his wife swears up and down she didn't want anything to do with that board, did not want it in the house, and it appeared back in the house. He says that he put it in the fireplace, burned it,
yeah,
then threw the pieces away, and the damn thing showed back up again. Now, you know, obviously I don't know if someone was messing with him or what, but he swears the thing came back to the house. So finally, he took it somewhere and got rid of it at a dump. And that was it. But kind of a real scary paranormal experience he confided in me about, and was scared to tell anybody, but doing what we do, he felt comfortable telling me about the story.
Yeah.
Pretty disturbing. But yeah, burning it, just throw it in the fireplace and burn it may not get rid of whatever's attached to it. You've got to do the right.
No, and honestly, if there is something that is attached to it, burning it will just motivate it to attach to something else.
Jump.
And usually that something else is you. So no, it's never recommended to burn it. Now there is ritual. There is a ritual eradication using holy fire. And if you've watched Ghost Adventures, you've seen us do that a couple times. It's only a little quick, blurb at the end, but you've seen. I think they featured it twice. Once in the Sin City episode, and one was one of the ones we did in California. But honestly, those are holy fires, and that's something that only clergy can create. It is something that is a very sophisticated blessing of the church, and it is used predominantly for that. The eradication of, or the neutralizing of some kind of malevolent attachment. So, the best thing that you can do to get rid of a problematic Ouija board is to not sell it. I saw Joy in there was talking about how people tend to donate problematic boards to get rid of them.
Yeah,
and they're afraid to destroy it. And they should be afraid to destroy it, because it's not something that, most people are able to successfully do. And so, but selling it's worse, because now you're just giving another family the problem, and it could even get worse in the course of the transition to wherever it ends up. So, the best thing to do is to send it to people like us, where we would be able to eradicate it for you in a holy fire. We've done this before. And I think we've even featured, sometimes on live stream on social media, we've even shown you holy fires where we throw in objects for eradication that are attached objects and whatnot. The only ones that I won't do are dolls. I don't throw toys or dolls into holy fires. I prefer to do exorcisms and blessings, and then the dolls get sent to the Haunted Museum. But we neutralize their effects before we do that. But Ouija boards should most likely be disposed of in a holy fire.
So I hope that kind of answers Belinda's question. She says, "How can someone safely get rid of a Ouija board?" I think you pretty much said it. There's not a real way to do it unless you know how to do the holy fire, or give it to a priest or proper trained person that can do it.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. Any other?
We have another one down here.
Yeah, well, let's hear it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
For those of you out there, we're taking open topics, open questions, anything that you have about personal questions about your, paranormal disturbances you're having, or, if you have a story that you'd like to share with us, we want to hear that too. And the number to call to do that is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. If you're watching it on YouTube, we have the number up there on the screen, so you won't miss it. Call us, and we'll take your call. We won't bite your head off. We promise.
Yeah, and from Chig, we have, if you use one, don't you create a portal? I know nobody qualified to close a portal. Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't properly open the session and close the session, you can let things in that you may not even have to deal with until years down the road.
I mean, they call it a portal. It's really metaphysically speaking.
It's a layman's term, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a portal. What people really are referring to when they're talking about portals is that there are various things that we can do that weaken or narrow the natural barrier between the corporeal and non-corporeal sides of the universe, which are coexistent, all right? They exist simultaneously in the same space. So again, I don't like the term portal because it implies that it's like a doorway to another dimension where, there's some other location out there, the spiritual world, and we live in the, the physical, natural world, and there's like some kind of difference between the two. It's the same universe. It's the same place. The only difference is that the corporeal aspect of our nature filters out a lot of that non-corporeal data and limits it to just thoughts and feelings that are specific to the needs of getting through the conventional world. But at the same time, there are spiritual connections that can be made, and that is based upon one's vibrational rate. So the higher one's vibrational resonance vibrates at, the closer they're going to be to experiencing celestial types of encounters. So people or saints, for example, that have visions of saints or, angels or something of that nature that have these ongoing relationships with these things, it's because they're resonating at such a high frequency that they become more compatible with those energy systems. And if they learn how to control some of the variation between their corporeal selves and their non-corporeal selves, which in our layman's terms we would say the body and the spirit, then they're able to see or experience those things. But likewise, most people are vibrating at a very low level. Okay, so the lower your vibration is, the more it resonates with things that we would associate with the demonic. And those are where most of these malevolent forces tend to originate from. But it's not another dimension. It's right there in our midst. It's just we are typically not trained to learn how to speak, to see it, to speak with it, to encounter it, to work with it, or to resolve it. And so when we use something like a Ouija board, what that does is it weakens the field between the corporeal and non-corporeal and makes it easier for the two to interact. And that's what a portal really is basically just sort of like creating a little mini thinning of the veil, if you will.
Yeah, I think portal has just become the accepted vernacular, and it's something that everybody can kind of understand. If you get into the deeper meaning of what it is, sometimes you lose folks.
Well, yeah, and because they want to see it in some kind of more concrete term than it is. But it's more like a metaphor. It's not an actual thing. You're not talking about an actual doorway. You're talking about a weakening of the natural field that separates the corporeal from the non-corporeal parts of the universe. And we can...
Like poking holes in the veil.
It is. Yes, exactly like that. It's like we can weaken that. We can artificially weaken that. There's certain tools we can use to weaken that. And Ouija boards are one of them. Or, it weakens on its own. And we've talked about the 2 times a year where the natural field weakens, and that's from just around Halloween, and that continues on till about the second week of January. And then it thickens back up again for a while. And then around the time of Lent, through the first days of Easter, it gets weak again. In fact, all throughout Lent, it weakens and weakens and weakens. And that actually could be the result of an artificial weakening just because of the ritual power of that season. That it's being practiced, and the immensity of following the passion of Jesus Christ and everything could actually help to artificially facilitate the weakening of the veil. But most of the time, we might say those are the two natural occurrences of the way the veil weakens. There's also locations on the planet that are naturally weaker than other places. These become places of power, and they're usually in folklore places that are considered to be risky or dangerous. All caves, caves where it became this metaphor for the entrance to the underworld. All caves have energy fields where the field is weaker. And so you might think that, all caves are portals. Well, you could use that terminology if that's how it's easier to visualize. But in reality, what it is that caves just operate at a frequency where the resistance between the corporeal and non-corporeal parts of the universe are not as solid. And so the two aspects can pass through more easily and interact more easily in those places, which is why caves have this ancient tradition going back to this idea, ancient times where they were entrances to the underworld, and even to this day, the series Hellier is another example, where caves were featured predominantly in that, and as one of the focal points of where this activity that they were observing and researching came from.
Yeah, they really did a bang up job on that. Yeah.
But caves were the feature. Yeah, caves were the focal point. Yeah. So that's
storm winds.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the next question, storm winds. What are your thoughts on Damien Eccles and ceremonial magic? That's going to be out of my wheelhouse. So
what was the name again?
Damien Eccles.
Damien Eccles.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah,
and ceremonial magic.
I've heard the name. I don't know too much about. Let me see if I can pull something up and I can look at it during the break that we're going to be taking here in a minute. I don't. Let me see. I'll look into it and see if I can recall more about this person. But I can tell you a lot about ceremonial magic now, and I don't know what is meant by what do I think of ceremonial magic. But I mean, I can talk about what I can, basically ceremonial magic is the operations of using archetypal patterns and communicating, I could say, perhaps is a better way of putting it, communicating with archetypal patterns to produce the effects in the physical world from the non-corporeal parts of our will. So let's say, you want to produce something, and you want to do this as an action of your will. Ceremonial magic can use various archetypes and various patterns of archetypes in ritual context, almost as if it's like a computer code, to unlock results at a future point in time that literally produce the very effect that you're trying to achieve. The danger to this, of course, is that most people do not know what they're doing. There are numerous societies that deal with this. Thelema is one of them. The OTO. There's numerous other groups, hermetical societies that get into this type of work. Even the Masons. You might even argue
Golden Dawn.
Some of the Golden Dawn that's a great example. The Golden Dawn. These are all, you might say, formal institutions that practice on a certain level, some level of ceremonial magic, and which is basically exercising the will at a higher level using archetypal patterns and connections to those patterns through ritual, which is basically a metaphor that is played out in some type of formal way in order to make the connection archetypally. It's a little bit different than witchcraft. Well, it's a lot different from witchcraft, because witchcraft is what is referred to in the occult as low magic. And the reason for that is you're not necessarily making these connections with higher beings through invocation or evocation, which is exclusive usually. Well, not so much. Evocation is typically exclusive to higher ritual magic. Invocation can be in either form. It can be in high magic. It can be in low magic. And the difference between the two is evocation is demanding and conjuring a being perhaps against its will to do your will, whereas invocation is more like a request. So you might say every prayer that a Christian prays is a type of invocation of the Holy Spirit. But you would never evoke the Holy Spirit, because you would never demand that the Holy Spirit do something for you. You would always ask God.
Yeah, that'd be a bad idea.
Yeah, it would be a very bad idea. Same thing with angels. And, there's a whole range of ceremonial magic that deals with the Enochian magic. And that's another aspect to this, using higher beings to produce.
That's a whole another show.
Yeah, it's another show altogether. But that gives, I think, some idea for some what we might be talking about when we discuss the idea of ceremonial magic. Do I suggest people get involved in it? Absolutely not, because unless you are highly skilled, and unless you can guarantee that the institution that you are working through knows how to recognize this and facilitate your development in this, and let me tell you, just because they have an old name, it doesn't mean that they're any good anymore. I know a lot of agencies that still go by terms of these old secret societies like the Rosicrucians and whatnot. And honestly, that does not necessarily mean they're any good. I'm not saying that any particular group is dangerous or any particular group is wonderful. I'm just saying you got to do your real due diligence. And I'm not sure a lot of people really even know how to begin appropriate due diligence in this without already putting themselves at great risk. The best ceremonial magic in the world, honestly, is to just simply connect with God and reach out to God and work with a relationship with God. You won't need any of these other things. They become just distractions along the way. And it's really just for people who are not necessarily equipped to use faith, which is the highest form, I think, of ceremonial magic that there really is. And it doesn't even require any ceremony or magic. All it requires is absolute relationship and trust. And that's all that we really need from any of these things. So we're at the top of the hour, and we're going to take a break here for a few minutes, rest my voice, give you a chance to kind of go to the restroom if you need to, stand up and relax. Get those questions, okay? Call in, 516-453-0138, or just log into the chat room on YouTube and ask your questions there, and we'll be still monitoring them and answering them when we come back for the second half of the show. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to Vestiges After Dark. The topic tonight is whatever's on your mind. Open topics, open lines, and the number to call for that is 516-453-0138. Otherwise, we might not know what's on your mind, and how are we going to talk about it otherwise? Well, I mean, there's a back door. You can go into the chat room on YouTube and ask a question there. And that's where we've been taking most of our questions tonight. Unfortunately, it seems like as busy as it was last week, nobody wants to call in this week. That's fine. We can keep taking questions from the chat room. 516-453-0138 if you do change your mind. But we'll be taking more of your questions here in just a moment. Don't go away. I think what it is, honestly, is that most people, because it's a podcast and not live radio on terrestrial channels, are used to listening on demand. And another thing is that a lot of people are from Europe. A lot of our audience is from Europe, and it's kind of late at this time for them. So I think that's part of the issue. Why we don't have as much people calling in as we would if we were on the terrestrial radio, as far as, you know, like the pool of potential listeners and the larger audience that would provide. To do a call-in show, you know, to really have constant open line interaction, it really needs to get big. Now we're giving it time to do that, and we need to come up with perhaps even some more strategies to promote the show in more places so that the live audience grows, because the on-demand audience numbers are fantastic. I mean, we consistently hit in the thousands all the time, which is not bad for, you know, a little podcast like this, but for a call-in show and doing live, you know, calls like we're doing right now, really needs a large audience to draw from, because you're always dealing with the fact that you got people that are not comfortable calling in. So you only, out of any general population, you're only going to get a small pool of people that are willing to do it. And when you have you know, small audience live, but a large audience on demand, it doesn't really help you for taking calls. But for anybody that is listening and has a question, comment, story about the paranormal, about metaphysics, about religion, spirituality, esotericism, whatever, even if it's off topic, that's fine too, because there is no topic. It's whatever you want to talk about. The number to call is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. Until then, we will continue to take questions from the chat room. Sister, did you see any during the break?
Oh, yeah, we have several. I'm having a hard time keeping up. So Lori McDuffie has a very good question, and it's a deep one, but very current events. What do you think about the situation going on between Israel and the Palestinians? Do you think that there's a spiritual war going on between principalities?
Well, I mean, okay, that whole general region is spiritually active. It always has been. It's part of the reason why, you know, well, I mean, every biblical story has its origin somewhere around that general vicinity. And, you know, the death of the Son of God and the resurrection of the Son of God, it leaves an impact on the location. So, you've got ancient history there. I mean, even the Temple Mount, for example, it has so much archetypal history as well as actual history. Or I should say conventional history, because honestly, archetypal history is probably even more actual than conventional history is, or what we would consider to be the historicity of an event if it happened in our understanding of events. But the fact is, these are very extraordinary places of power. And the very fact that, the temple was destroyed by the Romans, as foretold by Jesus, and it was never rebuilt, and then eventually taken over by what now is the Dome of the Rock, where the mosque is, and has stood there for hundreds of years, and there's no way you can remove it without probably causing World War III. There's always going to be spiritual tension there that bleeds into the physical world. And so because the entire region has been upset by these spiritual realities that are all happening from ancient times, even right now into the present day, and is to date unresolved. And then you have the three Abrahamic religions all making claim, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all making claim to that same general region and having their own take on it, creates, again, spiritual dissonance, whether we like it or not. It does. And I'll be the first one to say that the mosque on top of the Temple Mount is not helping matters at all spiritually, because Christians can put a church anywhere. The religion as it exists can be. You can put a church anywhere. I live stream the mass out of the chapel, my private chapel at my house. Proof positive that we don't need any particular location to do what we do as Christians. So the church can be literally anywhere at any time. Again, getting back to that, where two or more are gathered in my name.
My name. Yeah.
There I am in their midst. That's the kind of the principle upon which the Christian church is built. So we don't really need places of power. I mean, we've got them. There's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. There's obviously all these various places. Vatican is another place of power and pilgrimage. But we don't need them to do anything that our sacrifices can be offered anywhere. Okay, so Christianity really should have no claim whatsoever to at least the Temple Mount or anything that's going on up there, because it doesn't need to have anything other than just a place. So there's that. Islam, well, I mean, they've got Mecca and Medina. I don't know why they need Jerusalem too. I mean, I understand where it falls into their theology, but I don't understand why, other than the fact that it's just going to proliferate this ancient tension between Jews and Muslims, why there can't be something that's worked out there. If everyone could put their ego at bay and just let that happen. But that's not the nature of man.
That's the word, ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that creates spiritual tension, okay? Because even though Muslims have their far more sacred places, Mecca and Medina are far more sacred than Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, okay? They're still making claim to it. And the only place for Jews, the only place where sacrifice can ever be offered is there. And as long as that mosque is there, the temple cannot be. And and that becomes the spiritual foundation upon which everything else happens politically. And of course, the politics between Israel and Palestine and all of the things that are the underlying conflict is very complicated. It's very much involved. And it goes back to some of these ancient things. But whether or not there's a spiritual reality that's occurring that is causing this, to a degree, yes. Maybe not in the sense that you've got these angels and demons battling it out, principalities and whatnot, and now it's affecting us. But that's kind of a metaphorical way of expressing that these spiritual realities have bled into the phenomenal world, and everyone that's in that region is affected by this. And because most people are spiritually inept, they're going to be very much influenced by them. So that spiritual dissonance gets stuck into their resonance, their vibrational resonance, and it becomes part of their reality. And that's what creates this constant violence. Ultimately, it's what creates it. But it all stems back to ego, and it's all controllable if we were to make the choice to stop. We don't, as human beings. And I say we because we're all responsible. It's easy to say, oh, it's all the Jews' fault, or it's all the Muslims' fault, or it's all Israel's fault.
No, it's humanity's fault.
It's humanity. We are all participants in this, and we are all responsible. There is no scapegoat that's going to alleviate you of the guilt. Your sin is enough. I can promise you that. Okay? So you're just as guilty as they are. You're not innocent, nor am I. But we can make the effort. What really ultimately decides how guilty or how innocent we are is how much effort do we make to make the world better. Sometimes that's done through, slapping people on the ass and waking them up. Sometimes that's done through more gentle teaching. And sometimes, it's not done at all. And most of the time, it's the latter. No one's doing anything. They're just helping to make it worse.
We're so fixated on me.
Yeah.
We forget about everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what's making the world go into a tailspin.
Yeah. So there you have it. I mean, that's my take on it. Yes, ultimately, everything that happens in the corporeal world occurs first in the non-corporeal. So to use more vernacular, and everything that happens in the physical world first occurs in the spiritual, and then bleeds out into this one. So more or less what the person asking the question, I didn't get the name, but
Lori.
Okay, well, what Lori's asking is correct. There is definitely spiritual forces, call them principalities if you want. They are forces that are beyond us, that are find their origination and just the eternal troubled history of that location, and it will always be a mark. Which is why even to this day, I mean, when you create an archetype like saying, Armageddon is an actual location there, we call Armageddon as if it's like some event. No, Armageddon's not an event. Armageddon's a place.
It's a place.
And Armageddon is in there, right there, in the midst of all that crap that's going on all the time. And the reason that is archetypally connected to the end of the world is because of this energy. There are places of power that are very dark, and that's one of them. It's ironic that we call it the Holy Land because it's probably the most unholy land there is, just because of all the blood that's been spilled in the name of God out there.
Yeah.
It is an absolute desecrated spot, and that's not good. That's not good. Honestly, it would be better for this world, for the entire Middle East to be washed away than it would be to literally continue to create this tension and to allow it to continue. But it's up to God. It's not up to us. I'm just talking archetypally and vibrationally. It would be better if Jerusalem did not even exist. There is nothing holy about it. It is a desecrated location. I have no interest. I used to be. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to go to the next question, but finish, sir.
Oh, I said it used to be one of the things when I was a seminarian. There was nothing I wanted to do more than to go to Jerusalem and see the holy spots, right? Because we as a Catholic growing up, the Holy Land. This is where Jesus walked. This is where Jesus taught. This is where Jesus did all these things. And now I could give a good damn if I ever see it. I wouldn't turn down an opportunity to go, assuming there was a reason to go.
I would definitely go.
But honestly, to walk in the desecration of what should have been a holy spot but is now turned into this disaster zone, I have no desire to see any of that. It's like going to Auschwitz.
Yeah, I don't know how emotionally I would react to that.
Yeah. No, it's like going to any place where there's been atrocity. It becomes desecrated. It becomes evil ground. So there's nothing holy about the Holy Land. Nothing. It's all been desecrated. So that's why this continues to be a problem out there. And I know people don't want to hear that, but you know what? Grow up. You know, we don't deal with we don't deal with imaginary things on this show. We deal with the realities. And just because we talk about the paranormal and esotericism, and it seems like this kind of ethereal conversation, no, there's a concrete side to this, and it's an unpleasantness, a large unpleasantness to it. And you know, my students get it. Not everyone else will, but that's okay. You're gonna turn it off if you don't like it.
It's a hard truth.
Yeah.
Speaking of vibration, Chig is asking, can your vibration resonance change? Well, absolutely. That's what you have to work on to raise your vibration.
That's what the church,
and that's done through learning.
Yeah, that's what the church does. Okay, see, the whole purpose of religion is in prayer and the sacraments and the conferring of grace and the cultivation of grace is to raise one's vibration. So, you know, demonic attachment, again, we think of it in terms of like this invisible monster who's hiding in the dark and then jumps out and bloodsucker that he is, latches onto you and steals your energy like some kind of vampire. We think of it in horror movie terms. We need to stop doing that to a degree. I mean, in conventional language, you kind of have to describe things this way. And oftentimes I find myself doing so as well because it's just easier to talk the talk that people understand than it would be to try to go through all this prerequisite knowledge that's necessary to develop a better model and better semantics. That's what my webinar's for. That's what my students are there to learn. So people that want to go deeper and learn a more accurate way of explaining these things, you know, there's that option. But most people don't want to take the class. Most people just want to have some kind of basic guidance, and that's why we'll sometimes talk in conventional terms, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, as long as you do understand that there's a much higher ineffable reality at work and responsible for these things. So when you're talking about, you know, demonic attachment, what it really is, honestly, it's not this thing, it's a monster hiding in the dark, you know, looking for someone to attack. I mean, yeah, that's kind of the visualization we're going to create for it. Even the Bible uses that kind of visual. But the reality is that your vibration is so low that you become compatible with negative energy around you. And then all that negative energy becomes compatible with you because you're resonating at the same frequency. And now all the detriments of that negative energy becomes part of your reality. So if you want that to change, then you need to literally modify the vibration to raise it up. And then you'll be more compatible with celestial forces, or what we associate with more celestial things rather than demonic things. And then your life improves dramatically. And that also includes your health, because low vibration is very unhealthy for a creature of creation. So that's what causes all of the spiritual deficits, as well as the emotional, psychological, and even physiological, physical. So all of that is connected. All of that is something that absolutely can be modified. And prayer and sacrament is the best way to do it. There are other ways. Meditation is one. Even diet. There's ways that you can even raise vibration with diet. But the best way, the most effective way, the most efficient way is prayer and sacrament. So I hope that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. From Casal, Zozo question for the night. Is it true that Zozo is an impostoring name of the actual demon heard? Oh, they heard this on a live stream last night.
Is the Zozo demon an imposter name of...
An impostoring name of the actual demon.
Well, you know, Zozo's an interesting little concept. And honestly, probably we should have Darren Evans back on to talk about this and maybe answer this question in more detail, because he's really the expert on it. And he has found all these places within history where the name Zozo or the word Zozo it creeps up. It's fascinating, honestly. It seems to be a foundational archetype that's the current manifestation in which it takes place. It's this thing called Zozo. You know, and honestly, I've even experienced it in the first time I ever had a Ouija board, because there is a phenomenon with Ouija boards where sometimes when you're in the midst of a conversation or something and you're getting this good feedback, all of a sudden the planchette starts just going from Z to O, Z to O. And they're usually at opposite sides of the board, at least the one that I was using. And so it would just keep going back and forth across the board, but it would just jump to Z to O to Z to O. And I mean, I knew nothing about Zozo when that happened. It's just a phenomenon I noticed, and something that was just well known to anybody. Same thing happened to me in
high school. Yeah.
It happened in high school to you?
Yeah, we were clueless. We didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. So, is there something to it? Yes, there is something to it. There is history to it. Even in the Infernal Dictionary, there is an entire article that just details the associations with Zozo and when it goes back and the earliest record and everything else. So, no, I would not say it's just some kind of. How did the person put it again?
Is it just an imposter name for the actual demon?
No, I don't think it's an imposter name. And honestly, there really is no such thing as that, because any kind of demonic energy can manifest under any particular archetype, and if that archetype becomes fused enough to maintain cohesion, will eventually develop a name that gets attached to it and associated with it and becomes the name upon which that entity generates power. So it doesn't even matter if this was a creation of somebody 20 years ago, or if it was something that actually does have ancient connection, which Darren Evans would say it does, and I certainly can see evidence that it does as well. So either one is irrelevant. What matters is whether or not it has cohesive energy today and can be, and that energy is generating around that particular category or name or classification. And in Zozo it does. So, but at the most basic level, to answer the question, no, I would not say it's an imposter name. But I'm not going to go as far as to say it's a fallen angel either. Zozo seems to be in our categorical system of 4 types of demons: the fallen angels, the elementals, the created or thought form, and the last category, the wrathful spirits. Zozo seems to be somewhere between an elemental, a high-level elemental, and a created. And maybe it is a fusion, and that can happen. If there's
I would lean towards created, but yeah, the fusion makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there could have been some precursor energy that was elemental that was collected by various individuals and then redirected into what is now the full manifestation of the Zozo demon. That is very possible. And that's something maybe, again, it might be a good idea to bring Darren on if he'll come on the show.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. You could do a whole show just on the Zozo phenomena.
Yeah, reach out to him and see if he'd be interested to come on. Write this question down, sister. And that way we can ask it again and go into more detail regarding it. He's been on the show before. And if you look in the archives, you can even find the show where he talked extensively about the Zozo demon. But we can ask him specific questions about this if you all would like that. We can have him on if he's willing. He's been busy lately. He's got family things.
He's a busy daddy.
Yeah, he's a daddy. Yeah, so
so Moosh Kaval is wanting you to share your alien story. No, that could be a show by itself too.
Oh my goodness, that is a show by itself. I you know what? Let's go ahead and do this.
Maybe the highlights.
What's that?
Maybe the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the highlight.
Let's talked about it before.
Let's go ahead, and we've got a caller on the line. Let's go ahead and take the next call, and then after that, we'll assess the time, and I'll see how much time we have to actually discuss it. I don't mind talking about it, but I mean, it does require. Oh, we just lost that caller. Call back, caller.
Come back.
Like I keep telling people, don't hang up, because it's like, geez, it's like you stay on hold for like 5 seconds. It's a radio show. I can't take you as soon as you call in. It doesn't work like that, and it's all open lines, meaning literally, we are not screening calls right now. We're just taking callers as they come, and when we have a break, we'll take it. So don't hang up. All right, call back, and we'll take your call. Hopefully, we will have time. I guess I will give you the alien story now that we lost our caller. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so basically the alien story. Let me preface this by saying that one of the things that I pride myself in being able to do, one of my little superhero skills in the paranormal, is the ability to make direct observations. It's what I've built my entire career upon. It's why I'm good at what I do, and I do this by literally using scientific method as much as one can, because obviously when you're dealing with non-corporeal reality, the scientific method kind of breaks down a bit because consistency is not there, and consistency is one of the necessary parts of the scientific method. In other words, you want to see that there's consistency in observations, right? So to be able to come up with a conclusion and draft a theory that can be proven, you need to see that it's provable under numerous angles and observations. So I try to do that with my own skill, with as much as you can in the non-corporeal work. And so I'm pretty good at that. And honestly, everything that we do in terms of working with the spiritual or the paranormal, and I've been able to make observations using various techniques, mystical techniques, meditation techniques, as well as even using higher levels of prayer, doing this even as a monk. All these things became part of my praxis that made me who I am today, and allows me to draft a good model, something that is perhaps a little bit more accurate than previous models. And that's what I tend to share with people who ask me questions. And maybe someone wants to know, how could you possibly know this, Bishop? Where are you getting this from? It's usually from direct observation. This is what I've seen, and this is the best way to describe what I've seen. And even though most of the time I'm seeing things that are largely ineffable, I can kind of draft a metaphorical model around it in a way that makes sense to the people of today. And that's what I've tried to do, and hopefully I've been successful at doing it. But at the same time, there are certain things that I've not been able to see. And that's what's really bothered me, because I'm usually able to see anything except for one phenomenon. There's one phenomenon in the paranormal that I have not been able to crack. And I don't know why that is. I can't answer that question. I have my speculations about it, and maybe we can even do a show on those speculations, but I can tell you that the one area of the paranormal that I've not been able to directly observe like I can with all these other things is the area of alien phenomena. It's completely close to me for some reason, and it fascinates me because of it. Because anytime I've tried to do and use my techniques that I have used to observe all other aspects of the non-corporeal world, or things that are mysterious or not exactly clear to us, I have been able to derive great insights over the course of my life, but not with aliens. I've never been able to identify what they really are. People ask me all the time, do you think they're demons? Do you think they're, demons in disguise, or are they from another planet, another dimension? Are they just terrestrial and we don't, people always ask, and despite my best effort, I have never been able to crack into their reality and discover at least something that I can use to say, now I think I know where this is going. I cannot do that with aliens, and I don't know why that is, but it frustrates me, and it's led to some of the things that have happened. So one of those times is the time I think the person asking the question, who was it again? Who asked the question, sister?
Mushkaval.
Oh, okay. Mushkaval?
Mushkaval. That's how
okay.
I'm saying it.
Yeah. Mushkaval's asking about that, and I think what she's referring to is one of these times. Now, this was about, I'd say, 17, 18 years ago. And I was living in Las Vegas at the time. And at the time, I was not a practicing Christian. In fact, I would not have even considered myself a Christian at that time. If you would have asked me what I was, I probably would have said Buddhist, but I was not even really a formally practicing Buddhist. It was just my spirituality. That's what I was practicing back then. And so I was making these observations, though. And these observations that I was making actually was what led me back to Christianity. But before I made that leap and bound, what I did was started to try to look into cracking the alien code. I wanted to know what they are, and I wanted to know where they came from, and I wanted to see if I could actually interact with them. So I started doing meditations to see if I could observe something from that element of reality that we call aliens. And what resulted from that exercise, which took only a few weeks before I started to see results, was I had what was, for all intents and purposes, the precursor to a classic alien abduction experience. And it was quite remarkable. And so I recall being in Las Vegas. I want to say Tracy was at work, and we were young. I mean, this was, like I said, this was about 17, 18 years ago. So we were just recently married, and we were living in Las Vegas, and I was home by myself. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to use this time. Usually when she was at work and I was at home, I would use that time to meditate, because prior to this, I was meditating several hours a day before I got married. And then after I got married, it became hard to do that because I was no longer in college. So I was working a job, and then you have other obligations that take you away or distract you from doing the work that you normally would do. What I was normally doing as a college student, which was, going to school, studying and taking tests, and then using the rest of the time to meditate. And as a single person, it's easy to do that. So I was doing it for several hours, and so I was still very proficient. I'm still very proficient at meditation. I just don't do it as much as I used to. But back then, I was still very much in the habit, and I thought, well, I'm going to use this time to meditate because it's one of the few times I have where the home is quiet and I'm not going to be distracted, and maybe I can see what happens. Well, I tried this for several weeks, nothing. Could not get any results. It just turned into basically a relaxation session, a stress reduction session, but nothing that developed any insights of observation that I could use metaphysically to derive a model that could say, this is what I think aliens might be, and this is what I'm seeing from my work. So I stopped, but I kept the meditations going. And back then, those days, Tracy and I only had one day off together. The rest of the time, either I was working or she was working. And then we both had 2 days off, but only one day of those was a week was together, and the other day we were home by ourselves. And so on that off day, I would again meditate, but this time I wasn't meditating looking for aliens. I was just meditating. So I went into meditation, and everything was fine, and suddenly I sensed that, I started to bring myself out of the meditation, and I sensed that before I opened my eyes, I could sense that somebody was in the room with me. Just that feeling like when you're just laying in bed, but you're completely awake, but your eyes are closed and you just hear something. It was just like that. I could sense that there was something there, but I did not necessarily know what it was. So at that point, of course, normally I would slowly take myself out of the meditation, slowly come back to normal consciousness, which I was already pretty much awake. I just hadn't opened my eyes yet when I heard the noise. And so I opened my eyes, and there, lo and behold, was what would be, for all intents and purposes, a classic gray alien. What you would see on TV, the Alienware logo for computers, the big dark black eyes and the little slit for a mouth, just looking down over me. And I think in one of these, this happened a couple of times. One of these times, it was two of them, just looking down. And when I looked up and saw them, when I was laying on my back and I opened my eyes and saw them there, I could not move. And I could tell that they seemed somewhat what looked perturbed, that I noticed them. And so at this point, I started fighting the sensation of being sort of paralyzed.
Hell yeah.
And I immediately got up to a seated position. raised my torso up to a seated position, and they were gone. But what I did notice, and this was the thing that really shocked me, was that the imprint of their silhouette was still reflected in my retinas. So just like when a person takes a flash picture of you and you get that little light that you can still see for a few minutes after the picture was taken, you know that?
Yeah, the shadows.
Yeah. I could see their image on my retinas for about 2 minutes after that. And it was very strange. I never really had anything quite like that. And this continued to happen for a couple more times. And I would make an effort one time that it happened to talk to them, to ask them what they wanted. And again, all I got back was this feeling that they were perturbed, that I could see them and then blink and they were gone. So that happened for a few times in Las Vegas. And then a couple years later, we moved out. And then we came to where we now currently reside in Georgia. And this is when we came back to Georgia, where Tracy's family is. My family moved here after we moved here from when we were in Las Vegas. And we were living with Tracy's family for a period of time after we came back, so that we could get ourselves established out here, and start a new life here. And I remember being in their guest room early after we had come back from Las Vegas, and Tracy was fast asleep, and I would read to get myself tired. And I was reading a book. It was actually just a mundane book. I don't even remember what it was. It might have been on whiskey or something. I don't even recall. I think it was on rum. Actually, it was on rum. And I started to get sleepy, and I closed the book, and I put the book on the dresser, and I shut the light and lay down on my side. And suddenly, I'm almost instantaneously, as soon as the lights were off, I heard a rustling around that sounded very similar to the same thing that caught my attention back in Las Vegas when this occurred about a year and a half earlier. So at that point, I immediately sit up. And there's enough light coming in because the moon was full that night, and it was shining literally right through the window. So even with the lights off, there was still a blue glow in the room that was actually quite a bit of light, enough light that you could almost read by it. So it was still it illuminated the room very well. And I saw in the corner of the room, at the foot of the bed, towards where the door to the bathroom was, I saw two, again, gray aliens, just like the ones I saw in Las Vegas. These were taller and slender types. One was very tall, that was all the way to the ceiling, so he must have been well over, I would say, 7 feet. And then there was a shorter one. And they were both in the corner of the room, completely standing still. And so at that point, I just stared at them and they stared at me. And I laid back down and continued to watch them with the lights off. At this point, nothing's happening. They're standing there watching me. I'm watching them. And I start now nudging Tracy with my elbow to try to get her to wake up.
Hey.
To see this too. And she's not waiting. There's nothing I can do to wake her up. It just, for whatever reason.
I've heard that from other stories. Yeah, where they couldn't wake their spouse up.
Yeah.
During the experience.
Could not wake her up. Now this is interesting because, see, before I had been meditating. So you could always, a skeptic could always say you were still in a meditative state, or it was like a type of dreaming hallucination or something. So they could always say that what happened in Vegas could be that. But this time, I was completely awake. I had literally just turned the light off to go to sleep when I heard the noise before my head hit the pillow. And this is what I'm seeing now. I'm fully awake. There is no meditation here. I was fully awake all day. And this was before I had fallen asleep or even gotten really, truly tired enough to actually pass out. And so I'm laying there. I'm trying to get her attention, trying to wake her up. Cannot wake her up to save my life. So I look over at her and I say, Tracy, nothing. At that point, I look back. They're not in the corner anymore. And I look up and they're now hovering right over my head, looking down at me.
Nope, no thanks. Nope.
So it was like instantly they were there. Now they're over here and they're right down. And at this point, once again, I could not move. I could not speak. I could not move. And
was that paralysis?
And I kept fighting it. Eventually did. Got up, turned on the light. They were gone, but I could still see the imprints of them in my retinas again, the same way I could in Las Vegas. And that was, that's the story that Mushkabal's asking about, and that's what happened. So take from it what you will. I know in a couple weeks we're going to be having a discussion on UFOs, particularly.
With Josh.
Yeah, with Josh Warren. That's going to be on. Let me make sure. That's going to be on May 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Live show with Josh Warren about UFOs and aliens, and we're going to talk a little bit about the strangeness in government right now, not just with the economy, the pandemic, but also just with now their seemingly casual acceptance of the fact that they exist. We've been researching them for a long time. I find that
yeah, we're expecting disclosure to be a little more exciting. They're like, it's going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's practical disclosure. It's practical. I mean, they didn't come right out and say, we know what they are. They're aliens. They're here. They've been here for a while. I mean, we're not getting those details, but the fact is they are acknowledging that UFOs are a real phenomenon, that they have been creating programs through research and to observe. And I find it interesting that this is coming out around the same time as the rest of the government's strangeness. Because the government's not acting normal. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you are the biggest Trump fan in the world. The Conservative Party is not acting normal. They are not acting like the Conservative Party, the Republicans that I grew up, with Ronald Reagan and everything else. Okay? Not acting like that. And nor is Joe Biden acting like a typical Democrat. Or he's not acting like even Bill Clinton was when Bill Clinton was president. A completely different party now. The government does not act normal. It hasn't been normal for a long time. And I find it interesting that this is happening alongside this strangeness. And then now we got the pandemic and we get the strange reactions from that. And we've talked about that before. Something's not right about all of it. And we're going to ask Josh.
Yeah, I agree. I can't put my finger on it, but there's definitely some strangeness going on that none of us can really put our finger on.
Yeah, there is. And then
everybody feels it.
They do. And when you look at like even Hellier, I can't help but feel like that's somewhat connected too.
Yeah, it's all connected somehow.
Yeah, I think so. But we're at the end of the show. I wish Minnesota would have called back in. We could have taken their call, but they didn't. But anyway, guys, it's the end of the I mean, 2 hours goes by like that, even without callers. If you give me questions, we can keep talking.
A lot of great questions tonight, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to our audience. Right. Thanks for our YouTube listeners for giving us those great questions. Sister, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Talk to you next week.
Yeah, we'll be on next
Bye-bye.
week. Again, that is going to be Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called Experiencing Esoteric Mysticism. I will have my students on as our guests, and we'll be talking about esoteric mysticism as a way of life, as a praxis for unlearning the conditions that keep us enslaved to our ego and lead to things like war and, all that nasty violence that's out there. We're actually capable of so much more. You wouldn't know it by watching us, but most people are asleep. I try to wake them up a little bit. Hopefully we're doing that with this show. But until then, I'll see you next week. Take care and God bless.
90 seconds. Seconds. 10 seconds.